Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the 2015 NYPD Emerald Society Man of the Year, Chief Kevin Ward.
Thank you. I would like to thank the Emerald Society Board, and especially the President, Karen McCormick, and Pete Whalen, for asking me for this award. Karen is a third-generation police officer, but more than that, her father and her grandfather were presidents of the Emerald Society. Pete Whalen. She is also its first female president. Pete Whalen also comes from a family of police. His father is retired from the police department. His two brothers are active members of the department. When they first came to see me, I was actually surprised and quite honored they were asking me to be Man of the Year. The Emerald Society has a special place in my heart. My father was a charter member, marched every year with the Emerald Society on St. Patty's Day. He passed away 19 years ago. Excuse me. Each year on St. Patty's Day, I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional. Hopefully that'll be it. But each year on St. Patty's Day, my brother and I, we go to the cemetery, we visit my father, and then we go to St. Patty's Parade, and we march together. I wear my father's choker, cut-down choker that he wore in the 1950s. So it feels like he's marching with us in spirit that day. This year, I know he'll be especially proud that an award was honored by the Emerald Society. I'd like to thank my wife, Carrie. She's the love of my life. She's always encouraged me, always supported me, and straightened me out sometimes. For me, it was love at first sight. For her, I'm not so sure. I had to call her for 3 weeks before she'd go out with me. Irish stubbornness. I call it perseverance, but at least it paid off for one of us. She's been a partner with life in raising our 5 children, Connor, Ryan, Kelly, Devin, and Kira. I'd also like to thank my family. My brother's here tonight, flew up from Florida. He's retired, member of the department, a captain. My sisters, Maureen, Donna, and Peggy. I would also like to thank my friends, childhood friends, who came here from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, especially those from 74th Street. I'd like to thank my co-workers, especially those from Staten Island who made the long trek from Staten Island. Those from the Police Commissioner's office who work with me now. I'd like to thank my friends from law school, old friends. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years since we graduated. And the people in the Key Promotion School that I worked with for the last 17 to 18 years. I would also like to thank some absent friends, or think of some absent friends, especially Police Officer Moira Smith, who grew up with us. Who grew up with us on 74th Street, and Police Officer Krista Hoban, who I went to Siberian High School with. His brother Marty and his wife Miriam are here tonight with us. I would like to thank Commissioner Bratton, who could not be here tonight. He's in Washington, D.C. with meetings. and all the members of the executive staff who came out tonight, and especially Chief O'Neill for coming out. When I thought about what I was going to talk about, the first thing I thought of was, well, how I got here. So I thought about my parents. My father was a proud member of the department, 30 years, mostly in the Detective Bureau. He was first generation Irish American, very proud of his Irish heritage. My mother, on the other hand, parents immigrated long ago, and she was all American and very patriotic. In World War II, her brother won the Bronze Star, and her brother-in-law was a Marine pilot who was shot down and killed in the last days of the war. My parents were very different. My dad was very outgoing, very social, liked to have a drink or two, liked to sing and dance, and he smoked his cigars like all detective squads did. I remember one night my father was investigating the murder at the Met. It was a famous case back in the 70s. And he was at the Met at 1 o'clock in the morning, and he couldn't help himself. He jumped up on the stage, and he sang Danny Boy to the detectives he was working with. From that day on, he would say he sang at the Met. In contrast, my mother was very quiet. She never drank, she never smoked, she never swore. But they shared common values, and they instilled in us, my mother, patriotism, and my father used to always say, never forget where you came from, and be proud of your Irish heritage. So I thought about where I came from, how we got here, how we all got here, and I thought of my grandparents, Patrick and Agnes Ward from Donegal. Donegal. In 1913, my grandfather, who was the youngest of 13, whose mother passed away when he was 2 years old, at the age of 18, immigrated to America. Several years later, my future grandmother, who was the second oldest of 9, immigrated to America. I have a copy of a prayer book right here. It simply says, from Helen McDade at Donegal Station. And it says to my grandmother, the day I left for the USA. Very simple, very, very to the point. That was my grandmother. They had a name for it back then. They called it an American wake. And you have to remember what they did. They were never going to see these people again when they got on that boat and they left. It was a time, years before Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic, before there were transatlantic phone calls. Letters took months to reach back to the homeland. There was a finality to this incident when they got on that boat. I just think about my grandfather, 18 years old, sitting on that dock and coming to America, saying goodbye to his parents or his father for the last time and his friends. I think all of us should take a moment now to think of our relatives who left their native land so we could come to America, and silently thank them. When the Irish arrived in America, all they wanted was opportunity. They wanted to be judged by their ability, not by their faith or class. America did not disappoint the Irish. They thrived here. They built the railroads, the bridges, the skyscrapers. They started the union movement and led the union movement. And because they valued education, they built up the Catholic education system in this country. And because they were always idealistic and righteous and willing to fight for causes, even lost causes, even hopeless causes, they went into politics. I always like the saying, a true Irishman can tell you to go to hell, and you'll thank him for giving you directions. Well, John F. Kennedy is the most famous Irish president. 22 presidents have Irish heritage. Andrew Jackson's parents were born in Antrim, and Ronald Reagan's grandparents were born in Tipperary. The Irish made their mark everywhere. In banking, Thomas Mellon started the Mellon Bank, who funded General Motors, U.S. Steel, and Standard Oil, the largest company in the world. Henry Ford, whose father was from Cork, started Ford Motor Company. James Hoban designed the White House, while Robert Fulton invented the steamboat, both from Kilkenny. But it was on the battlefield where the Irish made their greatest contributions to this country. Since Lexington and Concord, the Irish have fought and died for America. In the Revolutionary War, General Richard Montgomery from Donegal was the first general to die in battle for this country. In the Civil War, 18 generals were U.S. born. General Meade defeated Robert E. Lee at the Battle of Gettysburg, while General Meagher started the Fighting 69th and led them into battle. Years earlier, in 1848, General Meagher led a failed rebellion in Ireland. He was captured, he was sentenced, he was convicted of treason, and he was sent into Australia, life in Australia, before he escaped to the United States. In World War I, Major Wild Bill Donovan, while fighting for the Fighting 69th, won the Congressional Medal of Honor, the Silver Star, and 2 Purple Hearts. He went on to become general. He is the only man in U.S. history to win the 4 highest medals of this country. He is considered the father of the U.S. Intelligence Service. In World War II, General McAuliffe parachuted in on D-Day with his troops. On December 22nd, in the middle of the Battle of Bulge, General McAuliffe was surrounded by the Germans. They asked him to surrender. General McAuliffe, he didn't swear. Believe it or not, an Irishman who didn't swear. His simple response was nuts. When the American colonel went to deliver the message to the Germans, they didn't understand what he was saying. So the colonel said, "The general's trying to tell you to go to hell." The 101st Airborne held out for 4 more days before they were relieved by the 4th Army, General Patton's 4th Army. 58% of Congressional Medal of Honor winners are Irish American, more than twice any other ethnic group. So I started to think about why the Irish were so committed to America. There was 5 Murphys have won the Congressional Medal of Honor. Most recently, Michael Murphy from Long Island, Navy SEAL. In World War II, Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier in U.S. history, won the medal. And in the Civil War, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Murphy from Limerick won the Congressional Medal of Honor. And interesting enough, he went on to become our first single police commissioner in 1901. And I believe he is our only Congressional Medal of Honor winner. So why were the Irish so committed to America, more than any other group? I thought of the story of Patrolman Martin Sheridan, Patrolman Matt McGrath. They were members of the Irish Whales. They were a group of Irish-American police officers, about 6 to 10, who competed in the Olympics for the United States. Between 1904 and 1924, these police officers, Irish-American police officers, won 22 Olympic medals, 12 gold. Martin Sheridan, Patrolman Sheridan, won 9 medals and won 5 gold medals. He was considered to be one of the greatest athletes of his time. In the 1908 Olympic Games that were held in London, Martin Sheridan was selected as the captain of the American team. When the American delegation showed up at the stadium, they looked up and they saw the flags of all the nations competing in the Olympics, except for one. The U.S. flag was not displayed. In addition to that, in the line of march, the American team was put directly in front of the British colonies, the current British colonies of the empire. The symbolism was not lost on the American team, especially the Irish. The Irish have faced British colonialism for years. The British had taken away their Gaelic language, tried to take away their religion, starved them, and exiled them. During the opening ceremony, it was traditional for the teams to walk into the stadium and dip their flag to the King of England. So when the American delegation walked in, Patrolman Matt McGrath turned to the flag bearer, Ralph Rose, and said to him, "If that flag dips, somebody's going to the hospital tonight." I don't think that was the first time Patrolman McGrath said that. I think on the streets of New York, he probably said that a couple of times. Being 6'5" and 275, he normally got compliance. And he got compliance that day. The flag did not dip. There was an outrage by the British. The press flogged around Sheridan, asking for a statement. Patrolman Sheridan's response was pure Irish. It was eloquent, it was witty, and it was stinging. He simply pointed to the flag and said, "This flag dips for no earthly king." In that one sentence, he affirmed his reverence for his faith, his disdain for the class system that he fled, and proudly declared his loyalty to his new country. I thought about what Sheridan was trying to say, and I think what Sheridan was saying, I'm an American now. I am no longer a subject of the crown. I will no longer genuflect to the Queen, and my flag, the American flag, will not dip to a king. When I reflected on his statement, I realized why the Irish are so committed to America. America gave the Irish back their dignity. And for a proud people, that was a debt that they could never repay. So tonight, let's remember a patrolman who defied a king, a general who told the Nazis to go to hell, and an 18-year-old boy sitting on a dock in Ireland in 1913, so I could be standing here tonight. Although we come to celebrate our Irish heritage and remember what the Irish did for America, we must never forget what America did for the Irish. So I'll end in a very traditional Irish way. I heard some Donegal people. Any Donegal people in the house? Up Donegal, up the Republic, up the NYPD, and up the United States of America. Thank you and God bless.